Hi, I'm Kevin. Welcome to my channel. Today, let's see if smell-proof bags will keep your camping food safe from bears. A few months ago, I posted a video about the effectiveness of the OPSAK in protecting camping food from bears. I used an open can of sardines in that bag as a way of encouraging bears to attack my OPSAK to get a real test of the OPSAK's performance. I was really happy with that. I had some good video of bears and other animals attacking the OPSAK. The OPSAK held up really well. You can watch that video right here. Some people swear that smell-proof bags will keep your camping food safe from a bear. And a lot of people commented that I should also be testing smell-proof bags such as the OPSAK, which is often sold with the OPSAK. So I thought I would test this out. Will smell-proof bags such as the OPSAK or the Coglan's Odor Proof bags keep your camping food safe from bears? Now, if you search YouTube, you're going to find some tests of smell-proof bags on bears in captivity. I'll put a link to one of those videos below in my description. At first glance, the video that I've linked to looks really convincing. There's a bear chomping down on readily available food, and it's ignoring food that's been sealed in an odor-proof sack and tucked under a rock or a log. But I'm not really buying that the bear can't smell the food in the bag. I think the bear is just going for the readily available food, and if it gets hungry enough, it's eventually going to go after the food in that bag. Again, if you look around on YouTube, you're going to find videos of search dogs finding narcotics sealed in smell-proof bags. Check out a channel called Blaze or Bust. He's got a lot of great videos on the subject. Again, I'll include a link below in the description. I've yet to watch a Blaze or Bust video where the dog can't find the narcotics or other contraband that's hidden in a smell-proof bag. More recently, I posted a video about bears and their sense of smell. In that video, I make the case that bears have a tremendous sense of smell, a sense of smell far superior to dogs and certainly to humans. I make the case that as humans, we can't possibly fathom what it would be like to have the nose of a bear. So let's approach this logically. If dogs can smell and find items sealed in smell-proof bags, and if bears have a much better sense of smell than dogs, shouldn't bears be able to find food hidden in smell-proof bags? How can we test this? So here's the plan. Before all this snow fell, we knew we had an active bear around our property. It was always knocking over our compost pile, and early in the spring we left some chicken feed in a can and the bear knocked it over, got a bit of a reward, and even though we leave nothing in it anymore during the summer, that bear keeps coming back to it, knocking over the empty can, looking for more food. So we know we have a pretty active bear in the area. And I know from my previous video that bears really go and key in on a strong smell like sardines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the can of sardines, put it inside my so-called smell-proof bag, and put it out in the forest and see if a bear will come and visit it. To hold the odor-proof bags in place, I built a wooden box to support those bags. Lots of screws. This is for bears. I'm going to go out to the forest and screw that box to a tree at a height that I think a bear can reach it at. Then I'm going to wait and let my trail cameras try and catch the action. My hypothesis, based on what I know about bears and their sense of smell, is that any bear in the area is going to be attracted to that box. It's going to smell the fish even though it's inside an odor-proof bag, and I bet it's going to try and rip into that box and get at the fish. We'll see. Unfortunately, this isn't proper experimental design. Proper design would look a little more like this. Start with a landscape with plenty of bears. That landscape and population of bears are going to form what's called your scope of inference. More on that later. Then ideally, you're going to scatter your plots randomly across that landscape. You're going to do the setup like I have, but you're going to repeat it across a wider landscape. You might give a little consideration to spacing because you might not want one bear finding multiple setups. Then you would deploy the odor-proof bags randomly across each of these stations or plots, making sure that you have lots of replicates of each type of bag. Then over the same time period, you would monitor those stations for activity. Sometimes bears are attracted to things in the forest just because they're curious. So if you wanted to rule out bears being attracted to the setup itself without being baited, you would establish a control by putting out a whole bunch of boxes and trail cameras that didn't have any bait in them at all. I think it would be really cool to do an experiment like that, but unfortunately it would be very costly and take a lot of time. That would require an awful lot of trail cameras, and there'd be an awful lot of travel time visiting all those locations. So I don't want to take away too much from what I'm doing, but I do want to make it clear that I'm aware that this isn't a proper experimental design, and my inferences that I can draw from this are limited. So number one, I have no replication in my experimental design, which is a really big deal. In a proper experiment, you can say your trial represents all the bears covered by your scope of inference. If I put out plots across the boreal forest, I could say that my findings apply to all the bears in the boreal forest. If I limit my plots and scatter them randomly across northern Ontario, then I can say my findings represent the bears across northern Ontario. But this is quite literally in my backyard, and I'll be pretty lucky to get more than one bear visiting my camera trap. So in a really strict sense, my scope of influence is quite limited. Any findings I derive from this experiment are really going to only apply to those bears that I attract in the experiment. Secondly, I'm going to be testing several different bags by replacing them through time. My scope of inference also has a temporal scale. Bear behavior might be different in the spring than it is in the fall, and I could get different results if I test at different times. This project took over a month to complete, so it's quite possible that the behavior of bears in this area could be very different at the beginning of the month than at the end of the month. And lastly, I don't have a control for this experiment. I do know that bears are quite curious creatures, and they'll go after things that are left in the forest. It's happened to me before. I was once clearing a trail on my property with a power saw, and I had a gas can. I finished for the day. I was going to come back, so I left everything overnight. I came back the next day, and a bear had chewed through my gas can and made a mess of things. So it doesn't have to be food. It can be anything that's left in the forest, and I don't have a control against that. All right, so after having said all of that, let's take a look at the results. The first odor-proof bag I tested was the OPSAK. I had a bear come visit the site, but he didn't seem very interested. Next, I tested the Coglan's odor-proof storage bags. Again, I had a bear visit the site, and this bear showed an awful lot of interest in the bag. But it still didn't put any effort into getting at the bag. Lastly, I tested a regular Ziploc freezer bag. I believe I attracted a bear to the site. But he didn't want to show up on camera. If you listen carefully, you can hear him moving around. So my hypothesis was shot. I was sure that the bears were going to rip into that setup and go after the sardines, but the sardines were quite safe inside the odor-proof bags as well as the Ziploc bag. But I don't think that hypothesis was completely wrong. That hypothesis had two parts. Part one was the bears are going to find the fish. Part two was they're going to rip into that bag. But I do think the first part of that hypothesis holds, that the bears are able to find the fish. When I look at the video, my interpretation is that that bear visited the site several times, and at least once it keyed in very strongly on where the fish were. So I think it smelled something. So my overall interpretation of what I see here is that I now believe odor-proof bags do work. They work at least at reducing the scent that the bears can detect. I don't believe they're completely scent-proof. I do believe the bears smelled the fish. Based on what we know about sniffer dogs' performance and the fact that bears have a much better sense of smell, I believe that the bears found the fish but chose not to investigate further. My suspicion is that the odor-proof bag does cut down on the odors, and what the bear smells is interesting, but it's not getting a strong enough smell to pique their interest to look further. I believe they know that there's fish there, but probably they're not getting a strong enough sense to make it worth their while to investigate. I think that if the bear that visited this site had been habituated and had a reward from a fish smell before, then this bear would have probably dug deeper and tried to get into the box containing the fish. A previous encounter of that light fish smell, rewarded with some success, might teach that bear to dig deeper the next time. So this wasn't a perfect test, but I do think it's safe to conclude that odor-proof bags can provide a really good measure of protection for your food against bears when camping. I had a really smelly food source hidden inside an odor-proof bag. The bear was interested in it, but not interested enough to go after it. So I've learned something, and my mind has changed a little bit on the performance of these bags. So obviously using odor-proof bags is a really good idea. It's going to limit the amount of scent that a bear can pick up and might cause it to not be interested in your food. So although I'm really impressed with odor-proof bags, I still don't believe they provide 100% protection, especially if you're somewhere where you might find a habituated bear that knows the game, so to speak. It knows that a soft smell could lead to greater rewards. You could have problem on your hands. So I still highly recommend, even if you do use odor-proof bags, to use them in combination with another system. Hang your food in a tree, put it in a storage locker, bring a bear vault, do whatever the local rules dictate, as well as using that odor-proof bag. Use that odor-proof bag to give you a little extra confidence that a bear is not going to be interested in your food. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I really hope you got something out of this video. If you did, please hit like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you find time to get outdoors.